correspondent Grania Harrington is in Kampala. She joins us now live. Grania, a very good evening to you. What is the latest you can tell us?
Good evening. Yeah, so reports are now coming in saying the Islamic State has claimed responsibility for these attacks through its Central African affiliate based in eastern DRC. Now, that claim says 30 were killed and totally contradicts official reports, which say 33 were injured and only 3 dead. The other update is that President Yoweri Museveni has come out with a statement in the past hour specifically addressing young people who he calls his bazukulu, or grandchildren, which is his habitual way of addressing the youth in Uganda. And he says these attacks were carried out by confused and manipulated young people, suggesting the attackers were all Ugandan. He's also said 81 people have been arrested in the past 6 weeks, and that 7 suspects have been killed while resisting arrest. Now, this is all in the context of several other attacks which have happened in Kampala in the past 6 weeks. And while today's attacks were quite spectacular, in really downtown, very coordinated in the central business district, outside the Central Police Station and on Parliamentary Avenue by suicide bombers, only 3 minutes apart. But there have been a series of small attacks in Uganda over the past 6 weeks. A small device at a police station in October 8th where there were no casualties. A second one on a pork restaurant on October 23rd in which 1 person was killed. And a few days later, a third device exploded on a bus travelling from Kampala to southeastern Uganda, in which only the alleged bomber was killed. But today's attacks were much more spectacular. They were much better coordinated and much more planned. And so it seems that if this is really part of a pattern, as both the president and the security forces are claiming, that today's attacks were a serious escalation.
Grania, you were saying the president was talking about disaffected and manipulated youth taking part in this. There are reports of a domestic terror group linked to the Allied Democratic Forces. What are the ADF?
Yeah, so this has been somewhat of a shadowy group which has existed. It's quite well known in the region. It's existed for a long time. It's been around since the 90s, but was really routed from Kampala in the late 90s and has since been based in neighbouring eastern DRC along the border with Uganda. And their original aim was to overthrow the Ugandan government, and they were originally an Islamic group. But since 2013, they've been mainly carrying out some really vicious attacks in eastern DRC. They've killed thousands of people there over the past 2 decades, but in mainly small attacks. But in 2019, a radical offshoot of the original Allied Democratic Forces claimed allegiance to the Islamic State group. Now, in March this year, the US State Department designated this group, which they called ISIS-DRC, as a foreign terrorist organization. And since then, there have been attacks that have started to happen, as I said, in Kampala since the start of October. Now, these have been mainly nail bombs, improvised devices, small IEDs, which have gone off in various areas on the outskirts of the city. Now, today these attacks happened in strategic areas downtown where there are ministries, government buildings, a lot of people coming and going. And so these attacks seem to be very much more coordinated than the previous attacks that have been blamed on the ADF. So it seems to be a real change in the modus operandi of this group, a coordinated attack on Kampala, which hasn't happened in the past with this group.
Grania Harrington, thank you for that update.